means that you've got to behave because there are people watching, and that's what's happening. And we've got the great CEO, Tim Lawless, one of the busiest people in real estate in the last two weeks, because...
It's Tim McKibbin, Tom. It's good to get people's names right.
What did I say?
Lawless.
Oh, Tim.
Yeah. I was going to go with that, Tom. I'm happy with that.
Tim McKibbin, the CEO of the NSW, and Tim Lawless is the data specialist. Actually, he's got a better research director for CoreLogic RP data. Two different people. One's getting more phone calls today than the other, put it that way. Because, Tim, look, I mean, you're doing the best you can, and so are the real estate agents with the information that they've been given. On a daily basis, there are different things that are sort of coming out. We're just going to use the time that we've got with you this afternoon to actually just help us understand what we sort of know. I know that there was a media release about rent moratorium and about, landlords and tenants trying to work things out. There's also been an extension of the lockdown, a few definition changes. So, Tim, what do we know at the moment that we could share with the real estate agents?
So there are things, Tom, that we do know and things that we don't. So maybe if I start out with all that we don't know, we have not yet received the legislation that we need to see to work out what the negotiations, if you will, how much the moratorium on rents, how that's going to be calculated. So we haven't seen that. We keep asking for it. I've even asked for an advance copy of the legislation so I can start getting my head around it. I don't think we're going to get it today. I think it is probable we'll get it tomorrow. I've also, for those people in the commercial world, been speaking with that area of government that does that also. And so that will be a separate piece of legislation. So we'll need to get that as well. But as you would have seen in the press release coming out of government and also reaffirmed today by the Treasurer, there is going to be a requirement on landlords to provide support to tenants. But one of the things that I'm hoping that will be in the legislation, this is the reason I wanted to ensure that we had some input, there is a lot of support out there for people who have lost their jobs. And so what we're saying at this stage is that before somebody comes along and says, well, I need help paying the rent, they should exhaust all of their options in relation to getting some other government support. And we're putting that together and we'll put that out there too shortly, out through our channels, Tom, just so people can hand that on to tenants and say, here's all of your opportunities to go and to access it. Make it as simple as possible. Give them the websites they need to go to. Because in this time around, it's not like JobKeeper where the money came through the employer. In this time, it's going to come straight to the people that is affected.
Okay, so let me summarise what I've heard so far. There are certain things regarding eviction of tenants and tenant and landlord negotiations that right at this moment, we don't have all the information. We may have some of that information tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. You're also saying to me, unlike last time, the benefit, which was JobKeeper then, would come through the employer. This time, it will go straight to the individual. And what the REI is doing is getting a list of what those benefits are and what the contact points of those benefits are, like where you'd go to, and providing those to tenants. So saying to tenants, hey, there are things that you need to exhaust first before you actually take the step of, hey, I want my rent to be dropped by X amount. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So we're trying to do as much as we can with what we've got, but it makes it hard to, I suppose, put together a complete plan unless we know what the rules of the game are, and we don't have the rules yet. We also, last time round, designed some documents, because when we had tenants coming in saying, you know, I'm not paying the rent. My favourite guy said, I'm getting a pet and I'm not paying the rent. There's nothing you can do. So that wasn't quite true.
That's not very nice, eh?
No, but thankfully, look, thankfully most tenants that I think people dealt with were good people, as is always the case. And most landlords, I think, out there are also good people, and we all recognise that we've got to work together here. But we did create some documents for the property manager to be able to say to the tenant, you want to make an application for a reduction in the rent. That's great. We need to put that to the landlord. Here is a document that we'd like you to go through, complete that, provide us with the information, and we can then process that with the landlord. And that document we created then, Tom, responded to the current legislation that was in place. Now, again, we will do exactly the same thing this time round once we see what the legislation prescribes.
Okay, but there were other changes that we can talk about that you are aware of, and let's talk about those.
Yeah, so the public health order that came out yesterday, what it did was to segment New South Wales, if you will. Now there are 4 separate areas. So we have the Fairfield local government area, which they're now talking about it being the affected area. That's what the public health order calls it. And within that area, there are affected workers. So everything I'm saying now is only about workers. We'll come to people inspecting property in a minute. So in that particular area, if you go outside of that area to do work, then you have to have a COVID test every 3 days, as we've seen the lineups and the rest of it. Now, importantly, you don't need to get a negative coming back on your test to be able to go and do things. You just need to have been tested in the last 3 days. And that's obviously a rolling obligation. There seems to me to be a suggestion that even if you don't go outside of that particular area, the affected area, that you still need a COVID test every 3 days. And I think that's probably the safest way to read it. I know that that's a real impost on everybody, but I think that is probably.
So I'm clear, Tim. That's for someone that's in that Fairfield area.
Yep.
That is and we're talking about real estate here. Yep. That is a real estate worker.
Yep, that's right. So just the workers in that area, and all workers in that area. So that's the first one, Tom. So I think the best.
Do you reckon? Are you a real estate worker if you're not going to the office and you're not showing? If you've chosen to actually stay home, do you have to do a test?
No. So it's a good question. If you don't go to another premises, be it at work or
showing a house,
at won't be an open, but a private inspection, taking people through. If you're not doing that sort of thing, then no, you don't need to be tested every 3 days. But if you are interacting with other people in your job, then yes, you do.
It's a suburb of Fairfield, or is it a bigger area?
It's the local government area.
Right.
So that takes in quite a few other suburbs.
Okay.
So that's your first one, your first new zone. Your second zone is Greater Sydney. Now, people in Greater Sydney, if they go beyond 50 kilometres of Greater Sydney, then they need to get a test, and their test. I'm going blank now, Tom. How often they have to have theirs? Every 7 days. Sorry.
Okay, so if you're outside Fairfield and you travel 50 kilometres, which is a fair bit during this current time that we're sort of living in, 50K is a bit of a trip. If you do go 50Ks, you need to get a test every 7 days. Yeah,
that's right. So I think what they're trying to do there, because obviously that becomes a bit of a problem, doesn't it? People having to work out where 50Ks is, and I think what they're saying to themselves there is, that because you may live on one of these border areas, you know, you're in the Blue Mountains by way of some example, and you've got something, let's say in Orange or in Bathurst, maybe they'd be closer. In Bathurst, then you do have that allowance to let you travel a couple of 50 kilometres away and do some work, and then come back into the Greater Sydney area without the impost of having to have those tests.
Okay. Is there any other thing? Any other?
Yeah. So there's a couple of other things I'd like to mention. There is a lot of discussion about essential worker. So we're hearing, oh, you can only do this if you're an essential worker. Now, government hasn't provided us with any definition of an essential worker. So an essential worker is somebody that is a worker. But again, what government is saying, I think, is unless what you're doing is essential, then stay at home. So I think that is, but there is no definition that I can find, at least, that says these are the essential workers. So, for example, you know, your police and paramedics and these sorts of things, I think we would all accept them as being essential workers, but there is no definition of essential workers. That's the first point I'd like to make, Tom. Second point is that everything I've just spoken about is about workers, okay, not people who come and inspect property. So the buyers, for example, out there, their world has not changed. There's been no change to what they do. So they're entitled to go where they wish from wherever they are to inspect property.
Okay. Okay. So this is they're all good, and I presume it's not really the agent's responsibility or concern to worry too much about the behaviour of these people.
So again, Tom, really good point, because I've had a lot of people contacting me saying, can a buyer come from Greater Sydney out to a regional area? Can they do that? And whilst I've answered those questions for them, I think it is really dangerous for us to be giving advice to buyers. I think we say, look, you've got to make your own mind up whether or not you satisfy the criteria, not relying on what the agent's telling them, because the obligation is on the person, and in this case on the buyer, to decide whether or not, taking into account the public health order, whether or not that person can go and inspect that property. So I think that is a little bit dangerous of an agent to be giving that advice.
Can I? A very, very good point. Can I ask you, Tim? Can a principal force his staff to come to work?
Yeah, another great question. If the person can do their job from home, if they can, then they should stay at home. If they can do their job from home. Now, the answer to the question is in two parts, Tom, because if in the Greater Sydney area, the way I read it is, if the person can do their job from home, then that person is obligated to stay at home. In the regional area, if the person can do their job from home and would like to stay at home, then the employer has to take that in regard, to accommodate that to the extent that they can. But in the regional areas, as I read it, the boss can make you come to work. Okay. But it really becomes very subjective, doesn't it? Because the person in the Greater Sydney area, they would be saying, I can do my job at home, and the employer might say, well, I don't think you can do it from home. There are aspects of your job that, in my view, you can't do from home. Therefore, you have to come to the office. So, there will always be those subjective analysis going on there.
other things that you think we should talk about that are different to what we know? And the things that we do know is that, you know, people have seemed to be able to have moved on pretty intelligently. They go to appointments that are important. The rest of the time they're at home, they're on the phone, they're on their computer, they're using Zoom. Is there anything else that's different?
So no, Tom, I'd have to defer to you on all of those sorts of things, I think, but I do agree with you. Particularly the auctioneers are doing a great job. They've managed to jump straight online doing all that. I haven't been following the auction clearance results, and they've been quite strong. So congratulations to those folks being able to keep the market moving along.
They're doing. Go on.
No, well, just what I remember, I spoke about the public health order that we got given yesterday, as you know, and we've been able to analyse that and get the information out about it. There will be another public health order which possibly will come out today. Now, there's only one thing in the new one that I know for certain, and that is that the cessation date for the current lockdown isn't going to be this Friday, it's going to be the 31st of July. We know that. What I don't know is any other amendments that they'll make to the public health order when they take the opportunity. So we'll do our best. We'll get our head around that as quick as we can and feed it out. So I guess, Tom, right now I'm saying there's a powerful lot of uncertainty at this stage.
So what we know, they've said at this stage, the lockdown doesn't end this Friday, ends in 2 Fridays from this Friday.
Yeah,
but that can change as well.
Well, that's right. We only found out that it was moving from this Friday until the 31st in the Premier's briefing at 11 o'clock today. So that was announced, and they then went on to say that there'll be a public health order that will come out reflecting that.
Yeah, I think most people were expecting that most people here were expecting that the lockdown wasn't going to end on this Friday.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I mean, it was a bit like vendor management. They've conditioned us pretty well to slowly sort of saying, hey, you know, this and that. It's a bit
look, I think that's right. I mean, the hints were coming constantly, weren't they, about you know, we don't know where this is going to go. So I think we all knew.
Tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to have more information about this tenancy situation, right? Because I can see this is the one that we're going to grapple with more, right?
That's the biggie. Yeah.
That's the biggie, right? You know, and from what I've heard at the moment, the media releases that they've said is, hey, you guys work it out, and if you drop your rent, your owner can pick up some of the shortfall or all of the shortfall off their land tax. And if they're not paying land tax, we'll give them $1,500 or something along the lines of that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All this is a media release at the moment. That's
correct.
Right. So that's why we don't want to jump the gun and say, hey, but in the meantime, Tim, what do you reckon? Like, if there's people that get contacted by tenants like today, tomorrow, right?
And there are,
right? So they ring up, you know, mate, my cafe's closed. I've got no income. Anything you could say, Tim, that the property manager should say to them? Like,
well, and again, Tom, that's a really good question, because, you know, before they brought out, this is 12 months ago, before the government came out with all of the rules on what we had to do and what we didn't have to do, in the commercial area, people were out there doing deals already. And what was happening was that landlords were saying, I've got a really good tenant. I've got a tenant who always pays the rent, always done the right thing, not their fault. They find themselves having to shut the business. So we'll help each other through this. And there were deals being done prior to government getting involved in it. But I think the answer to the question is, you know, sit down with your people and try and work something out.
Yeah. All right, Tim, fantastic. That's the latest, guys and girls. Let's just see. Susan, have you got any questions there? No? Michael Whitaker, given in regional New South Central West in particular, can a retail tenant request a rent reduction? We have a retail tenant wanting rent relief due to COVID. We are not in a lockdown and have no cases at the moment. New South Wales Central West. I don't know, Tim.
No, well, again, I don't know the answer to that because we haven't got the legislation. But what I would be confident about is that there's going to be two sets of rules here. There'll be a set of rules for people in Greater Sydney, and then a set of rules for people out in the regional areas. One of the other tests, I think, will be you'll have to demonstrate that you've had a loss of income, and there will need to be some nexus between that loss of income and COVID. So, but again, we don't know what the formula looks like yet, so I apologise. As soon as we do, we'll be getting the information out.
There's another question, Tim, in relation to the memorandum on evictions. Are tenants on a 30-day sales termination notice exempt?
So,
well,
is this an eviction that's taking place prior to today? Is that right?
It seems like it. So are tenants on a 30-day sales termination notice an exemption?
Yeah, again, I'm really sorry. I sound like a cracked record, but until I see the legislation, I really can't answer any of those questions. That's one that we've asked ourselves, though. If there is already a process to evict a tenant for something that has happened prior to the announcement yesterday, you know, is that going to be disrupted? So I don't know whether or not that's going to protect that particular tenant. Frankly, we just don't know.
All righty, Tim. Let's get back to whatever we're doing. Whether you're Zooming, whether you're emailing, whether you're keeping an eye on Sky News, you know, we'll just keep doing. Might talk to you in the next couple of days.
Yeah, Tom. I'm hopefully, if you'll have me back, I'm more than happy to come and do it. But right now, I'm not a fountain of any knowledge. I'm somebody who's thirsty for knowledge.
All righty, Tim. We'll talk to you next day or two.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Thanks, Tim.